The graveyard shift. In the small town of Hollow's End, there was a story that no one dared to tell after nightfall. It was a tale whispered only among the bravest, and always with a hint of fear in their voices. The story was about the haunting nurse, known as Nurse Elara, who wandered the old graveyard on the outskirts of town. Many years ago, Nurse Elara worked at the local hospital. She was known for her dedication, but also for her unsettling obsession with the dead. She often volunteered for the night shift, particularly in the morgue, where she spent hours alone, tending to the deceased with a grim fascination. Rumors swirled that she would speak to the bodies, as if they were still alive, asking them about their last moments and the pain they endured. One stormy night, a terrible accident occurred. A bus filled with passengers skidded off the road near the graveyard, killing everyone on board. The bodies were brought to the hospital morgue where Nurse Elara was working. Overwhelmed by the sheer number of the dead, she became frantic, desperate to save those she believed were still clinging to life. In her frenzy, she made a fatal mistake. She misread the vitals of a young man who had survived the crash but was barely hanging on. In her panic, she declared him dead, and he was placed in the cold storage. The next morning, the other nurses found Nurse Elara sitting on the floor of the morgue, her white uniform stained with blood. She was whispering incoherently, repeating the same phrase over and over, "I can still hear them breathing, they were still breathing." The young man was discovered too late. He had died of hypothermia, locked away in the freezer. Devastated by her mistake and the guilt of causing an innocent's death, Nurse Elara disappeared from the hospital that very night. Some say she wandered into the graveyard and never left, driven mad by her failure. Years passed, and strange things began to happen in Hollow's End. People who ventured near the graveyard at night claimed to see a figure dressed in a blood-stained nurse's uniform, moving among the tombstones. They said she seemed to be searching for something, or someone. One foggy evening, a young man named Liam decided to investigate the legend. He didn't believe in ghosts and thought the story of Nurse Elara was just that, a story. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and his skepticism, he entered the graveyard just as the last light of day faded. As Liam walked through the overgrown paths, he heard a soft rustling behind him. He turned around but saw nothing except the thick fog rolling between the gravestones. He laughed nervously, trying to shake off the eerie feeling creeping up his spine. "Just the wind," he muttered to himself. But as he turned back, there she was, a woman in a torn and blooded nurse's uniform, her face partially covered by a bandage, standing beside an open grave. Her posture was twisted, her head cocked to one side as if she was listening for something. Liam froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Nurse Elara," he whispered, his voice trembling. The nurse slowly turned to face him, her eyes empty and cold. She took a step forward, her movements jerky and unnatural, as though she was being pulled by invisible strings. "They were still breathing," she murmured, her voice a raspy whisper that echoed in the stillness. "I can still hear them." Liam's breath caught in his throat as he realized the open grave behind her wasn't just a random hole in the ground, it was his own name etched on the headstone. He stumbled backward, tripping over the tangled roots and fallen branches. But no matter how fast he moved, Nurse Elara seemed to glide closer, her hands reaching out for him, fingers twisted like claws. "You have to help me," she pleaded, her voice rising to a desperate wail. "I can't hear them anymore. Where are they? Where are they?" Liam's mind raced. He had to escape, but the fog was growing thicker, and he couldn't see the path he had taken. His flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. Suddenly, The nurse was right in front of him, her face inches from his own. He could feel the chill emanating from her, smell the scent of decay that clung to her rotting uniform. "You let them die, just like I did." Her voice was a low, accusing hiss. "Now, you must stay with me, forever." With a final scream, Liam felt himself being pulled into the grave, the cold earth closing around him as Nurse Elara's mournful cries echoed in his ears. The last thing he saw was her bloodied face, a twisted smile playing on her lips as the darkness consumed him. The next morning, the townspeople found the graveyard just as it had always been, silent and still. But there was one new grave, freshly dug, with no marker to identify who lay beneath. And from that day on, those who dared to enter the graveyard at night claimed to hear not just Nurse Elara's voice, but also the terrified screams of a young man, begging to be let out. But no one ever returned to answer his cries.
It's strange. Somehow, everything seems unreal to me. An empty playground, and around it, a cemetery full of coffins. It's completely dark. I can barely see my own hand in front of my eyes. It doesn't matter, because I see you that way too. In my very own way. Do you want to play with me? No? But I like to. We'll play Don't Fall into the Grave. I'll wait here on the swing until you failed to run away. And then I'll come and get you, wherever you are.